David, do you want to start?
In the early 1880s, Tsar Nicholas of Russia III came to power and passed a series of anti-Semitic laws, and for that reason we have pastrami here. That's the long and short of it. But it caused this tremendous exodus of some 2 million Jews from Eastern Europe, and the majority of them came to New York, if even for a short period of time, as a way station onto other cities. And that was a tremendous surge. It was probably, I think, the largest single influx of an ethnic group at that time, and then shortly after, sort of around that time, the Italians came. But that changed the dynamic of downtown Manhattan and then throughout the rest of the city. And so those Eastern European foods, delicatessen foods, bagels, appetizing stores, and smoked fish, became something that very soon was very New York. I mean, the pastrami sandwich, the bagel and cream cheese, these became very New York foods where, you know, in the 1850s and 60s and 70s, you didn't see them. It just barely existed.
Yeah, that was one of the most interesting moments just in terms of delis, because there had been delis since the 1850s because you had lots of Germans. But they were German delicatessens. The thing that I found most astonishing, being used to the classic Jewish deli, was to see goose as the primary meat in delicatessens, until you get the big influx from the Pale settlement. You get Poles, Romanians who bought pastrami. You get that Polish-Russian mix of the kind of ingredients and the kind of foods, and of course, you know, kosher, that transformed what had already been an institution that New Yorkers knew well and were excited about, but it became an entirely different thing. And it shows how sort of one kind of classic institution can become another kind of classic institution. And thanks to, you know, the embracing arms of you know, the Statue of Liberty, welcoming these millions upon millions, and a different, you know, everyone in a way brought a menu to us.
I would also ask us to look at beer. Prior to the mid-1800s, New Yorkers were drinking English-style beers, ales and porters with top fermenting yeasts. And in the middle of the 19th century, with the large influx of German immigrants, they brought the tradition of lagering and making beers with bottom fermenting yeast. And they also brought the tradition of the beer garden. And there is a law that says that if you're going to have a brewery, you're allowed to have an adjacent beer garden. And these breweries were all over the city, on the East River and Bushwick. Bushwick had a street called Brewers Row. And you can still find some of those old vestiges of those breweries. So I would say German styles of beers.
And just one little, the lager beer really came into being also because of the Croton Reservoir, which was able to bring in clean water into New York, which was a first. And you really need clean water in order to produce lager beer. So that, I think, was a sort of a seminal moment. Also, that was in the 1840s, I believe. But then there's also, you know, thinking about the 19th century immigration, but then if you think about, and there were obviously, you know, French restaurants, Delmonico's were Swiss restaurateurs, but serving French food and sherries. But then in the 39 World's Fair, you had a whole influx of French chefs coming for the 39 World's Fair, for the pavilion, who ended up staying, a lot of them stayed because of the war, and opened Le Pavillon, which then Le Côte Basque and Le Caravelle, and it sort of introduced New York to a whole kind of French haute cuisine that hadn't been seen since Prohibition, basically.